I'm just apologizing in advance here because it's been a while since I've done a review, and actually my phone, which I record all my videos on, it stopped working, so I've been without a phone for a little bit, and now I have one. It's not as good, I would say. The quality doesn't appear as good, but I'm trying here, guys. I really am. So, Scoob was a new movie that came out a couple weeks ago. It was supposed to be in theaters, but with all the theaters shut down, they decided to pull a Trolls World Tour and put it on VOD, and it stars Frank Welker, Will Forte, Zac Efron, Gina Rodriguez, Amanda Seyfried, Mark Wahlberg, Ken Jeong, a bunch of people. And it's about Scooby and the gang, and they go on a mystery, and, well, kind of, and there's other Hanna-Barbera characters involved. I don't know. When I first heard they were doing another Scooby-Doo movie, I was thinking to myself, this didn't seem all that necessary. Like, I remember looking at the images when they first released it for the new movie. I kind of didn't like it. I don't know why, it just didn't look like it was rendered properly, I would say. And when I finally saw, like, the first trailer, it's like, okay, that doesn't look too bad. It looks like it could be kind of fun. But honestly, I'm not a big Scooby-Doo fan. I do remember watching it as a kid, but not, like, religiously watching it at any point. I do remember, like, certain aspects of it, like certain monsters, but never really, I wouldn't call myself a diehard Scooby-Doo fan by any means. And this movie came out during this whole thing, and I didn't like it. I didn't, unfortunately. Let's start off with the beginning of the movie, because, why not? Beginning is really nice. You get to see Scooby and Shaggy's relationship as it starts to build. Frank Welker's really good as Scooby-Doo in this movie. Also, the people who voice Shaggy, Will Forte, he does a good job. Ian Armitage from Young Sheldon, he does a good job as Shaggy early on. The beginning is fun, and they actually do a new version of the intro, which I thought was really good as well. Which, that kind of brings me to one of my problems with this movie. And like I said, Scooby and Shaggy's relationship is really good, but... And they also do try to add to it a bit. Like, best man and his best friend who's a dog. It's like, man's best friend and all that. Couldn't think of the words. And they kind of do that a bit with Dynomutt, voiced by Ken Jeong, and Mark Wahlberg's character a bit. And they do that a bit with Jason Isaacs, who voices Dick Dastardly in this movie, as well as his dog. So I thought that was interesting. Mark Wahlberg and Ken Jeong, they're probably the best people in this movie. Honestly, they provide the best lines. They have some of the best chemistry. It's like, that was probably the biggest surprise of this movie. So let's jump into what I honestly felt mixed about. Honestly, the animation, it's alright. It's not like it's groundbreaking by any means, but it's passable, I guess. It could be better, but it could be much worse. As I said in the beginning, I didn't really like the animation at first. I thought the stills made the animation look a little bit creepy. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of Christopher Robin, where it's like, I didn't like the visuals in that movie that much. They didn't look that great to me. But it's like, once you see the movie, it's like, oh, okay, I can kind of get it at least. It definitely looks better when they're actually moving. Also, I kind of didn't really care for the pacing of this movie, and I think part of the problem is because a lot of the jokes that you've seen in the trailers or the TV spots, they're all throughout the first act. So at various points, I'm like, oh, come on. I saw this already. When are we going to get to something new? Something else. Come on, people. So the second half's better, at least, because there's a lot of surprises in the second half of this movie. I think that was just one of the bigger issues I have with this movie. Was like, oh, okay, it's like, oh, actually, that's kind of why it's mixed. It's like, oh, there are good things happening eventually. It's just you guys sit through all the stuff that you kind of already seen for the first half. Now let's get into what I really didn't like about this movie. There are surprisingly a lot of things I didn't like. My first thing was when I started watching it, I was like, what time period does this take in? Like, what time period does this take place in? Because the movie starts off with California Love, a song by Tupac. Then in the same scene you see Shaggy with a cell phone. It's like, okay, fine, whatever. I'm not like, complaining. It's like, I'm pretty sure people have California Love on their iPods or whatever. And then, like, they go through their whole thing with the mystery and how the gang finally gets together for the first time as kids. And then it cuts to that intro where they recreate the opening scene. And then it cuts to them several years later at a diner. They're not doing as well as adults. And they bring in Simon Cowell, actually voiced by Simon Cowell, to tell them what they need to do to fix themselves. So either this movie takes place in the 90s, now, 2004 or whatever, I don't know. Timeline's all over the place. It's just like, hey, that existed. Let's throw that in there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work. It doesn't fix. Well, it doesn't matter. And honestly, watching that opening scene and then watching like the intro is like, oh, finally gonna get a really good Scooby-Doo movie that feels like a Scooby-Doo movie, but no, it doesn't feel like that after that. Honestly, I'll go as far as to say it feels like a slap in the face to Scooby-Doo fans. Again, I'm not a Scooby-Doo fan, so I don't know how fans would feel about this movie. But it's like, oh, this is what you came to see. You came to see Shaggy and Scooby. You came to see the gang. You came to see them solve a mystery. Well, the mystery they solve is not really like a mystery they would solve in an episode of Scooby-Doo. And it's just, they tried to add all these Hanna-Barbera characters. Some of them worked, like Mark Wahlberg and Ken Jeong worked. Jason Isaacs voices Dick Dastardly as the main villain. And he was fine, I guess. And they have like a really random one, Captain Caveman, voiced by Tracy Morgan. It's like, okay, whatever. It's just, you think it's going to be a Scooby-Doo movie, and then you realize, oh, no, it's not. It thinks it is, but it's not. Like, yeah, it focuses on Scooby and Shaggy and their friendship more than anything in this movie. But pretty much everyone else from the original show, like Fred, Velma, Daphne, they're all pointless in this movie. They really are. And it's like, oh, we don't really... And they don't really have any development in this movie. You don't really know a lot about their characters. Like, oh, you know that Fred is the leader, and Velma is the smart one, and that's it. You don't really know anything else about them. And you kind of had to have seen the show in order to know who these characters are. But this movie doesn't feel like it really has seen the show that much. It's like, yeah, we know the characters, we know the basic setup, and then we're going to do our own thing with it afterwards. So it's like, I kind of thought to myself, who is this really for? Like, is it for Scooby-Doo fans? Because they're only going to get that in like the first 20 minutes of the movie. 15, 20 minutes at most. And then it's this other movie that thinks it's like a Scooby-Doo movie, but it isn't. And is it really for kids? Because I don't know, because... Well, it's definitely mostly targeted towards kids, because a lot of the jokes in this movie are targeted towards kids. There's a lot of tropes that I've seen in kids' movies before. In this movie, like, it all ends with a big dance party, of course, because the Emoji Movie didn't kill that, unfortunately. That was old when robots did it, and that was in 2005. Just stop. So, yeah, the jokes aren't really all that funny. Like, the one Netflix joke that Fred has is like, you have to pay for Netflix? I'm like, how is that funny? How is any of this funny? I don't know. It's like, again, I'm not a big Scooby-Doo fan, so I might be biased against this movie or whatever. Or whatever. I don't know. Again, I don't know who this movie's really for, and I think that's part of the problem. It's not really for Scooby-Doo fans because it takes the basic premise and then just says, well, screw that. We're going to do our own thing with it, and we're going to throw in all these things with it. And it's not really for kids because it's based off a property that most of them probably haven't heard of, I would say. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people know what Scooby-Doo is. So maybe that's not really the issue. It's like they took that and just made it for kids only, instead of making it a movie that any Scooby-Doo fan could watch. And it's like, okay, let's just throw out all these things. It's like, okay, so let's make a Scooby-Doo movie with all these Hanna-Barbera characters. Okay, but what about the ones in Scooby-Doo? Can't you do anything with them? We're gonna give Fred some weird jokes, like a weird attachment to the mystery van, to the mystery machine. Also weird Netflix jokes. And we're also going to give him no personality. Okay. So I'll give Scoob 2 out of 4 stars. Stream it. It's beautifully animated. It's nicely animated. It has some funny moments. Some sweet, nice moments. But I don't know. Unless you're like a diehard fan of Scooby-Doo, Actually, I don't even know if this would even work with diehard Scooby-Doo fans, now that I think about it. It's worth watching at some point, but I don't know. I didn't really care for it. Afterwards, I kind of thought to myself, I'd rather watch the live action ones again. And I never thought I would say that. So, have you seen Scoob? What did you think about it? Also, who's your favorite Scooby-Doo character? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat, and stay safe.